أهلا وسهلا مرحبا بكم. Hello everyone, welcome at Apidays Dubai in Middle East. We're really glad to have you for day two of the event. We try to gather all the API practitioners around different events around the world, and this time we're really glad at Apidays to have an event, even if it's online for this first edition, but for Dubai and Middle East region. A lot of people were expecting us to come. We've gathered great speakers, great panelists for these 2 days to explain what's going on in the region. And so I'm really glad that this event is finally out. I just saw we are day two, so we had day one yesterday. So I will invite Prashant and Navshad, two other MCs at the conference yesterday, to maybe give you a hint about what happened yesterday. Hello, Prashant. Hello, Navshad. How are you doing?
Good, great, man.
Mehdi, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really well. So let's do a really quick, like 3-4 minute wrap up about what we heard yesterday in the different keynotes, tracks, panel, workshops. So yeah, maybe Prashant, what did you remember? What's your takeout from yesterday?
The future of finance is open, but it's also innovative, exciting, and the segment is really developing faster. I took these words from the panel anchored by Helen, actually. I really liked the enthusiasm and the information brought together by all the stakeholders in yesterday's session. That's the way they summarize, so I just took out those words to paraphrase. Yeah.
And Navshad, on your side, what's your takeout?
Yeah, I think it was a great experience. We try to cover complete life cycle of the API in terms of the functional, in terms of that technical, right from API skills and governance, which we covered, and monetization we covered, the regulation aspect. I think we covered the entire life cycle of the sessions yesterday. It was a great learning and experience.
Yeah. On my side too, there were great talks, but especially the talks about like the EPI mindset. You know, how to be prepared for open finance or open banking, open insurance, and to be sure that everybody in the company align with this mindset. So first, like mixing the business and the IT together. So IT is not just a support function. IT is a core business function, but that needs to be aligned with the business. That was really interesting. I've seen also some banks that were talking about going beyond regulation. You know, regulations are pushing for APIs, but if you just do for the regulation, you're just adapting. And you don't need just to adapt. You need to adopt technologies. You need to adopt APIs in the right mindset. So you will really embrace. I also liked in the keynote someone was talking about like accumulating value at scale. With APIs, you open your IT system and capabilities to others, so you accumulate maximum distribution capacity. So you, as someone said, you revert the firm. So you make the company bigger because everyone is able to come to self-serve, to discover your capabilities and embed them into their value proposition. So you make actually your company a lot bigger than it is. This is why you accumulate value at scale. And I will just finish on one thing I really loved. It's that the use of the word embedded versus open. We talk about open finance, open banking. Yes, this is the regulation that call it like that, or is it the practice? But the business approach is not just to be open. The business approach is to be embedded directly in other people's value proposition. So it's really about colonizing others. And I love the quote of a speaker yesterday who said, 20 years ago, you need to have a website to be digital. 10 years ago, you need a mobile application to be mobile, right? But now you need APIs to be in everyone else website or everyone else mobile application where it makes sense to embed your value proposition in end user experiences. So it's not about technology, it's about brands. Now, any brand can be a fintech as long as you embed banking capabilities or finance capabilities into your system. You have 5 million users as an e-commerce platform, 10 million users as a ride-sharing platform. You can propose banking services or financial services, to anyone at any time if you embed banking capabilities were opened by APIs to by banks, by fintechs, by others. So I love it's not about technology. It's all about customers,
Yeah.
and APIs enable to embed any value proposition in your own community. So I really loved that aspect. So maybe Prashant and Navshat, can you tell us what you've prepared for us on day two? What will be the speakers, the topics we will address? If we can share the slides also there to support the yeah. So what did you prepare for day two?
So we are starting with two keynotes. One specifically deep diving into the digital transformation in the governance sector and inside out view from the Dubai municipality, and then we are moving on the national open finance infrastructure. How that could differentiate the players, the countries in the open banking journey in the Middle East region. And then we will bifurcate into two different segments, focusing on the functional or the technology aspects. So we will first focus on the digital transformation again across different sectors, payments, banking, on the law, in the law and order sector. And then we'll also deep dive into how that mindset, digital transformation mindset, what is that mindset required, and how that culture can be brought into the organization. We'll also talk about how to modernize the mission critical banking applications. Then, in particular, we will have a deep dive with a couple of sessions in the aviation sector, specifically talking about the NDC capabilities and how the smart APIs are changing that landscape. Naushad?
Yeah, I think airline topics are very interesting topics, which is coming, which is a retail merchandising, which is using API, which is the entire airline industry is trying to move, and also the for technical people, where we are trying to bring from API first approach, how to design, how to modernize their API design kind of thing, which we are covering in that space as well.
And we have the closing keynote focusing on the data privacy aspects, what to look out for, what are the pitfalls to avoid, and what are those privacy enhancing techniques that to be followed, all while undergoing a digital transformation.
Yeah, it's true
So
that privacy is key. Regulation are coming also for privacy, and yes, it mixed with APIs security. So yeah, we're really glad that we finished by that topic on digital transformation and data privacy. I also want to be sure we thank the people who make this event possible, especially the sponsors. So we really want to thank especially Google Cloud, who is the gold sponsor of the event, and that of course provide API management capabilities and security capabilities and others. They have a booth at the event, so don't hesitate if you're interested. If you're already a customer and you want to reconnect with the teams, or if you're looking for improving your API management solution stack, don't hesitate to talk to them. They can tell you a little bit what they have done with some bank players or telco players or whatever in the region. I also want to thank other sponsors like DataStax, Gravity, Apida, or Postman, who are on different level part of DPL lifecycle management solution, and also providing solutions that can really help you. Especially DataStax launched Stargate. It's an open source API gateway for Cassandra, and Gravity is an open source management solution also that you can completely customize on your own. So yes, now it's time to start the day two of the event. So Prashant, I'll let you on stage to present the first keynote.
thank you, Mehdi. So a warm welcome to one and all to the day two of API Days Dubai. I would like to welcome Moyad Rathod, Digital Transformation Specialist at Dubai Municipality, to share with us his thoughts on the digital transformation in governance.
Hi, good morning, Prasant. How are you?
Morning,
Hi, all.
Moyad. Good, thank you. How are you?
Thank you. Good. Thank you for allowing us to share the knowledge, the journey, the experience with around the globe, not even in the Middle East. So today, inshallah, I'm going to talk about accelerate the digital transformation journey within using the AI and APIs and trends technology. Mainly how we can deal with that one, how we can move around the digital transformation, how we can make the strategies, how we can make it mature enough in order to take the benefit of digital transformation. Actually, there are many aspects I want to talk about from the API itself, where it will be some small statistics about that, why we need the APIs, why the digital transformation, what is the driver or derivers for digital transformation, and what are the benefits for that one. We need to talk somehow about the framework, because actually we found many times that there is something missed here in the framework of the digital transformation. And finally, we will give some digital transformation tips, or you can call it like small information, how you can move, motivate yourself in order to move on. So from now, 2022 till 2028, we will reach $1 billion, okay, using or in the market itself by focusing on the APIs, which actually a huge number. If we check that AI actually on the other side, we will see the same number. It's not by mistake happen to see those API and AI and other technologies that work together to reach that market share, or to extend the market share around the Middle East region by this number. It came because there is some, or there are many impacted area around the organization, especially I'm talking about the government organization, but we don't need to forget the other type, which is the private organization. Actually, I did the research by the checking the similarity between the private sector and the public sector within the governance area, and I found actually that it's almost the same challenges, the same issues that they face. And actually we recommend on that research that we need to put somehow some regulation in both parts to help both parts in order to give a value for the customers. Because finally, by the way, we found that the main point of importance within two parts will be the customers. And this is why now you can see around the organization, they talked about customer journey, customer happiness, customer indicators, and so on, because this is the point. This is the heart of each organization, regardless it's a private sector or a public sector. So why we need to care about the APIs, why we need to care about the digital transformation itself? Finally, because we have something called life relation. This comes from the private sector. We need to care about the corporate deviation, and we need to care about the government collaboration. By corporate deviation, there are many things missed within the organization in the private sector, in terms of governance, in terms of management integration, in terms of procedure, policies, and so on. They all need to increase the profit, but actually there are some competitors in the market they don't need to integrate with, and they don't need maybe somehow to share with them some success areas. But on the other side, with the government collaboration, we can see that there are many areas that were enhanced and were integrated between different governments. And actually, by the way, you can see that by removing, or the paperless strategy in Dubai, by removing billions of papers that already printed or shared and so on. Now you can just by integration within those different government entities to remove any obstacles within the customer's journey. This is the point where the life relation between either different public sectors organization or public sector organization and the other type, which is the private sector, to find a value for those customers. Finally, improve people, customers, and employee life. Even your employee inside the organization will feel better because you will reduce a headache from them, papers, data that they need to evaluate and they need to review it. Actually, they now can care about other parts, which is enhance the processes, find a new solution, bring in new ideas, brainstorming sessions, and those stuff. So this is actually why we need to care about the APIs and AI. But if we look digital transformation itself. What are the biggest drivers for digital transformation? Based on the research, we found that the cost and budget pressure is the main driver for putting digital initiatives. In the second part, you can see customer citizen demands, means there are customers requesting for enhancements, requesting for new services, requesting to ease their journey within the organization. Then we found federal government directives. By the way, if you check the federal government directives and the cost budget, almost they will go to the customer journey, almost they want to enhance the customer journey, which all give the final value, which is increase the profit of the organization. Finally, digital maturity of other agencies means that the competitors around you, you need to look at that point and you will check how they did that success story. Can we integrate with them? Can we take some benefit from that? Can we make some benchmarking and so on? So actually, those are the main four drivers for digital transformation. But if we talk about we need, and this is the market share within 5-6 years from now, and if we talked about that, okay, we need digital initiatives and so on, we need to know exactly what are the benefits of artificial intelligence on digital journey and the API itself on the digital journey for the customers and organization, either private or public sectors. Direct cost saving, yes, actually by reducing the prints, increasing number of services requested, doing some enhancements on the journey, adding in new services that help the customer, this will actually increase the cost saving on the customer side and also on the government or private sector side. Increase accuracy, yes, 100%. If you are working with the data that already verified by each entity, just you need to verify it or send an API or talked about it, directly it will be verified. No need from any employee within the organization to check the input from the customer. Reduce processing time, yes, 100% sure. Our employee now will work on other types of processes by enhancing it or doing something for that processes. Accelerated transformation, 100%. Look to the data all the time. There are many areas, many gaps within the data. It's not structured data. Most of the time, we talked about unstructured data. You cannot use it for AI. You need a lot of work. You need a huge efforts to work on the unstructured data. So within using the integration platforms around the governments and the private sector, you will reduce that things and you will accelerate the transformation because you can just embed, just adapt to new technologies, just use the data, just bring BI reports, tools, and those stuff. Finally, it'll guarantee the quality of your information, the quality of your result, the quality of the reports, the quality of any work that resulted from the digital transformation initiatives. This is actually the main point that all working on it. So we talked about the benefits and maybe I talked about how we can do something in order to increase your motive to go to the digital transformation. But when you go there, you'll find a lot or many digital transformation frameworks. My point of view actually, and with what actually I'm all the time push for to build a benchmark. First of all, you need to check different organizations, different journeys that already done before with other organizations. You can do benchmarking with other organizations if that's possible actually. And you need to do some research. You need to do homework. You need to make those practices that were happening with other organizations and mix it together to bring a new framework for your organization. Yes, there are hard, which is the customer, the product, the organization processes, but finally how you will do that, how you will work with that framework, it's different from organization to organization. You cannot just take it and map it and that's it. No, actually, this is the point. You need to map it. You need to see where is the gap that inside your organization that prevent you from increasing your profit. Identify critical success factor. Actually, this is the point, because if you put it, you need to follow that dream in order to reach that point, and you can evaluate yourself and you can actually take from the others feedback to check if it's done or not. And the most important point within that one, is the digital transformation and the governance. You need to govern all processes within the organization. It will help you a lot. It will give you a direction. Do the data classification, check the processes with others, check the classification of sharing the information with others, how you need to work, what is the processes or what are the processes to take the data or take the input from others. Finally, you will build R&D that support your activities, because research and development will help you to find all things that I'm just talked about. So how you will go with that one? Let's take it in a practice way. Opportunity. Consider emerging new business, new technologies, new services, shared mobility. Check that. Do some brainstorming session with your employee, with your customer. Bring all on the same table. This is the point that you need to start from by adding also the customer demand. All or most of us know that there is many complaints, many suggestions comes from the customer side. So we need to care about it. We need to receive it, and we need to add on it by doing some enhancements on that services or that processes that comes from the customers. This is the point. Imagine that you are starting a new service or a new business within your country, and you will reach one entity, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, maybe less, maybe more. Yes, but finally you need to check with all of them, maybe the same papers, the same process. Why we need all of that? So you need to include all. You need to involve all vendors, all entities within the customer journey, seamless customer journey that you can build it and you can suggest it for your organization. Digital technologies, you can use it, because if you just upgrade your data, make it structured, use new processes that will help you to make even the input from the customers structured. If you use the APIs, integrations with the other entities, then this will help you a lot within embedding the digital technologies within your organization, AI, robotics, process automation, and those stuff. But actually, the thing that will help you to do such an initiatives and the integrations and those stuff will be the way how you will implement it. Actually, here we suggest agile use, because really it will make a difference. Really, it will make feedback, getting the feedback from the customers, and enhance on that one by increasing the information that will be give you a value. Because if you are just focusing in your business departments while they're bringing you the new services and new technologies and new suggestion, this will not give you a huge impact within the working with the others by focusing on something different. So the agile way will help you to get the feedback, to bring the ideas, to check with the customers, to check with the departments within your organization, to give you the value that you want to do it, or the value that you are asking for. So this is actually the main points that you need to care about. But again, I'm talking about the integration in general, integration between departments, entities, government, private sector, whatever the type of the organization will help the organization, will help their customers, will help and enhance, improve the people life, the citizen life within the country and within the cities. Actually, if you will move for the smart cities, you will find how the integrated actually devices, processes, services all together will make life easy and make something new. We will move from situation totally to a different situation that make everything from your home. You can do something else, not just care about submission services. This words will actually, we will not hear it after 5-10 years from now. Why I need to go there, submit a new government service? Why I need to go there to just renew my rental for the car or house or something else? Nothing from that. Maybe you will find it automatically happened, just confirmation. You will receive it in mobile application by submitting the services from the organizations itself, not from customer themselves. Actually, this is my eyes, what I can see from now 10 years in the future from now, not again the similar situation as we can see it now. Actually, thank you very much for all of you. You can reach me on the social media, mobile, website, and so on. So again, thank you very much for all of you. If you have any question, I'm ready to hear from you. Thank you.
Hi, Mohit. Thanks a lot for those wonderful insights. A couple of questions. So,
Sure.
in terms of digital transformation, and that too, you are into the government sector. So, right. So, where do you see the most resistance to such transformation?
Actually, the point for digital transformation, what the people missed within building the digital transformation was the digital maturity. First of all, we need to see, we can do something. Can we implement those services? Can we implement those initiatives within the organization itself? What actually the impact? Because as you can see, there is some competitors or one of the derivers of digital transformation, other agencies. Means if I see other entity or other organization, they did some initiative, I will directly go and do the same. It's not like that. This is the point. We need to think about the value for each initiative, and we need to care about the sectors, all sectors. If we forget something like banking sector or finance sector, there will be a huge impact on the organization financial value. Not because I'm talking about bank sector or the financial sector in general, no, because using the process itself include different parties, either from government, either from private sector, either from any. By the way, I'm just skip this one, but now thank you for your question. Even inside the country or outside the country, you need to integrate. This is why the blockchain will help you to make sure about the data accuracy and the validation of the data. So this is the point, actually, Rishad.
Okay. And in terms of the transformations that you have seen, how is the adoption from the end users, be it the organizational employees or be it the vendors or the ecosystem partners or the end users or the common citizens? How is the adoption? What are the steps generally taken to ensure that adoption or increase the adoption?
Yeah, thank you for this question, Bassam. The adoption itself, it's a problem. First of all, you will find many challenges around that one. The major one, which is the resistance from the employee, the resistance from the customers even. I saw that a lot even in huge or mega projects. One of the projects were in Saudi Arabia with 8 million customers using that system. And it was really a huge system on that time. The point where you are working on a mega project will be how you will use the data that you have in order to enhance those customers, to push them, to motivate them to use the system. This is the point why the digital transformation using the new technology will motivate all people, customers, employee inside the organization or outside it, to help you to adapt those new trends or the initiatives for digital transformation. We can put great ideas for digital transformation, but can we implement that one? Can we take the benefit from that one? No, it will be different from one entity to another one. So this is the point. First of all, we need to start with the customers. We need to do some customers journey with the customers themselves. We need to sit with them. We need to hear from them, their problems, their issues, everything around. We need to build on that. This is the starting point. But again and again and again, employees is a crucial part of that one. We need to sit with them because they will work on that systems or that initiatives to help the customer to find their values. So again, the customer journey should or must include all parties, internally, externally, or even external or outside the country. This is the main starting point. If you reach that point, Prasan, really you will find a difference. Really, everything will guide you to go where.
Right. Great. Yes. So the last question. So majority of the time, such transformations involve bringing in technologies, bringing in tools which were never used in that organization before. Say, just simple example of an RPA tool, right? So what is the common approach in this part of the world, or in general, what that you have seen? Is it in terms of building that technical talent inside the organization, or go to a partner via a partner-led approach? which is the best, or which is that followed here, and what from your opinion, what is it the best one?
Yeah, thank you again. It's a great question for, especially for the RBA and those new trends. Actually, something called excellence centers will help a lot. We need to build. Actually, we saw that, and I actually challenged it with that one before. When we bring the RBA, because actually the RBA about mimic the task of the employee. So most of the employees think that this robots or this bots, they will take their jobs, okay, and they will be fired and so on. So the resistance will be huge. The other part of the employees, they cannot even understand how we can use the RPA within our daily work. So this is the point that push us to use something called Excellence Center, that we bring all on the same table. We build a framework how we can enhance their skills in terms of the new technologies, RPA, how they can understand even the point behind the RPA. It's not about remove your work or just put you away. No, it's about to give you some new task that really we need input from you as a human, because you are better in suggesting something new, because AI will, or robotic process automation will care about the routine task, why you need to spend your time in the routine task. Upgrading the skills, sharing the knowledge with them, building success story, and building the framework within that excellence office. We call it Center Excellence Office, to help all employees within the organization, including the vendors, to enhance their processes. And actually, one of the journeys that happened, we even suggest for that company to enhance on the RPA software itself, which actually we saw it later after 2-3 years, how that company actually be one of the biggest organization in the market in the robotic process automation.
Okay, great. I think you are really addressing or talking some of the things that the audience has been waiting to hear. So questions are flowing in. So just wanted one more question on, how do you go about COE? As it in, you mean a in-house COE, or a something a partner builds on behalf of you? What is the common approach followed? Is another question coming.
Actually, the point here regarding the vendors or suppliers and how you will work with that vendors and suppliers, it's include not even this point, it's include actually many points behind, because vendors financially, they think about the point in terms of cost and benefit, and you think about yourself from cost and benefit, but it's one from one perspective, and the other one for a different one. You care about yourself as an organization, they care about themselves from the customer side. The point here that if you bring all of those people, vendors, suppliers, and you sit with them, you ask them to do some POCs, and ask them to help you to enhance the maturity of your organization, to bring in new ideas or bring in new technologies, this will make somehow the maturity will be increased, and you can base on that work on the new initiative or suggest a new initiative that comes from your experience, because we know all the time new trends will cost you a lot. If you will start big, in this scenario, it's not something good. You need to start step by step, agile way. You can bring company POCs, prototyping, and you can do many things with them. And by the way, it happens a lot within the organization to use such a practice within the vendors or suppliers.
Okay. Great. So where do you see how, in terms of a digital maturity, where does the GCC countries in general stands vis-a-vis a European or Europe or European nations or US, and where are they ahead of the others, and where are they lagging behind? A high level
good question. Actually, if you check the reports and statistics around the globe from 5 years till now, we can see exactly how the digital maturity increased in a way that you cannot even imagine before in the GCC countries. Actually, the point that yes, there is some differences, one more, one less in the GCC countries, but almost if you will check the full coverage of all GCC countries in this area. In the Middle East itself, you can see a huge difference between GCC and other countries. If you compare it with Europe and North America or even Australia, you will find also somehow similarities. But the point that because here what happened, you need to look for the motive itself present. Actually, the impact of doing some seeing other agencies or other countries doing something best and pushing you to do maybe more than that countries will help you to enhance. Who will take the benefit finally? The customers.
Right.
Actually, the point almost we can see that either on the same level or in some areas they go beyond other countries. Yeah, but because if you ask me about digital maturity, it's include different parts. There is something related to the blockchain, something to customer journey, something related to AI, RPA. So in some areas it's more, and some areas it's less. But mostly, if you look at all, you can see yes, it's go beyond the most of the countries around the globe. And this is how the competition happen and how finally the customer will take the benefits.
Right. And from what we understand from an outside-in viewpoint is there is a huge amount of support or a drive from the governments in this region in terms of adopting technologies, right?
Yeah.
No matter how latest that technology in the world itself, yeah, you have been the governments have been giving full support in the adoption of it. Yes. And
Yeah.
another point I just like to bring to your notice. So one of the key observations that we had as a team in from the yesterday's session is there are a lot of hidden gems across this region in terms of, say, I'm particularly talking about the what we heard from the banking sector. There are a lot of advancements individual banks are doing. So probably those word is not yet out on how far many individual banks have made those progress in the open banking or open finance journey. And also the approach that we saw was it's a mix of best of the world, right? So there are some regulations in the world are best. You get the best outcome when it is enforced from a regulatory or a government point of view, and others from if it's coming from the market. And then we see a mix of all these things. And I believe that eagerness to innovate and move forward is very much ingrained in the value systems and the culture in this region. So that is helping quite a lot, right? Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot
Thank you.
for joining us and taking your time out. Looking forward to meeting you in person, hosting you in person next year.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presence. And thank you all. Thank you.
Yeah,
bye.
thank you. Joining us next is Abe Karar, Chief Product and Innovation Officer at Fintech Galaxy. He will be talking to us about deploying a national open finance infrastructure, accelerating the path to open economy.
Thank you so much, Prasad. And good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. This is actually round two with this presentation. Unfortunately, yesterday I was in Iraq and connectivity wasn't great. When the power went out, so did the internet connection. So I'm back to try to give this a second shot. So let's see how it goes. First of all, I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself and our organization. Just to give a bit of background, myself, I'm a banker of 18, well, I guess 15 years, and the remaining was mostly in digital transformation. My background is in data and analytics. Worked for large organizations such as JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Bank of Montreal. And then most recently in the region, been focused mostly on open banking and open finance. And Fintech Galaxy started the journey about 4 years ago. And we look at the end-to-end journey, starting from open innovation and then going through connectivity, which is either from a compliance perspective to comply with regulatory requirements, for open banking, open finance, and then obviously on the aggregation side. And I'm sharing this background because it's important to understand the perspective that I'm about to share with you, because it is based on some industry expertise. It's based on a lot of discussions we've had with governmental entities, central banks, regulators, and of course, based on learnings from other markets. We focus primarily on the platform side, but with all of the encompassing modules around it to ensure that when a technology is provided to one of our clients, they're actually able to deliver value with it. So that value creation is very much built into our DNA. We've been working with a lot of the large institutions, as you see here, and we've built out a fintech ecosystem with over 1,000 fintechs. About half of them are from the region, and globally from across 70 countries. And again, innovation is in the DNA. So it's important to know that technology is only about 20 or 25% of the win, but it's really about what you do with it. And what we do with it is we try to build on the innovation, and we build out proof of concepts and such. So what I wanted to cover with you today is the concept about deploying open finance as a national infrastructure, an open finance national infrastructure. What you see on the screen here is there have been 3 models that have been followed around the world. And let me just give you the scenario just so you understand what I'm talking about. Let's take a live example. Bahrain. Bahrain at the moment is the only country that is regulated in the Middle East. Bahrain started the journey late 2018. At the time, actually, I was living in Bahrain, and I was working on digital banking with Arab Financial Services. And I remember the central bank came to visit, and they were talking to us about how they're mandating the banks to prepare their infrastructure. And they had came out with the first draft of the regulation, and they said, we're going to do this in phases. And there was the initial draft, which was, interestingly enough, the UK standard. And by the way, this is a very interesting observation, and I shared this on a panel yesterday. A lot of the countries, what they have done, including Bahrain, is they will start with an existing regulatory framework that has worked, and then they will deploy it in their country. But then they will customize it, which is exactly what happened in Bahrain. Although when you look at the specs, they're almost the same, but they still came up with their own, let's call it localized version, especially when it comes to the other aspects of the regulation around operational guidelines and SLAs. How long do you capture the consent and keep it on file for? When does it expire? And by the way, this is the right approach, in my opinion. You cannot just lift and shift a framework and decide that it's going to work. I know that Saudi has also started with the UK standard. Some of the clients that we're working with, we are definitely recommending an open finance approach, which in that case, you're better off looking at the CDR standard and such. But just bringing it back to how they did it, they broke it out in phases, and they said, phase 1 of the BOBF, the Bahrain Open Banking Framework, will include these use cases, which are the type of APIs and the functions that they can perform. And this is the deadline. And then phase 2 will be these. And then, of course, since it's regulated, and this is one of the things I also believe work when it comes to implementing open finance or open banking in a specific jurisdiction, is enforceability. So there were penalties levied, and of course there were extensions and time was given, but it wasn't just loose. And when you look at the way they did it, they gave the banks an opportunity to become part of a working group, work with some of the industry players, some open finance companies or open banking companies, and provide their feedback. And it was a collaborative approach. But when it came time to implementation, it was either an in-house implementation or a third-party vendor implementation. And just let me take a moment to explain that. The in-house implementation is when the organization says, you know what, guys, I have a large IT team, they have the capabilities, and they will take our existing API gateway, they will connect the API endpoints to the core banking or to the middleware, and they will ensure that these APIs are exposed publicly, but then they will add all of the other relevant components that are required for open banking. Such components are the consent management. How are you going to manage that? How do you store the consent? How do you send it back? How do you revoke it? The customer authentication, a strong customer authentication, Also the reporting and monitoring that has to be delivered to the regulator to ensure compliance, the SLA management, and of course, the developer portal that allows the TPPs, the third-party providers, to connect, test in the sandbox component of the developer portal, but then also promote their app to production. And then, obviously, all of the certificate management and the security standards and such. So some organizations, HSBC, ING, Deutsche Bank, they have that capability, so they built it in-house. Interestingly enough, also when you look at some of the banks in Saudi that are going through this journey, they are going through this as we speak. And it's fascinating when you visit the banks and you do a bit of a tour. Some banks have actually said, we've built it in-house. We went out, we bought like a gateway. Some deployed Kong, some deployed Apigee, some deployed like an IBM Connect. Regardless, they've built then all of the components around it. And yes, some of these technologies come with out-of-the-box capabilities that allow you to comply. Okay. Then there are some that said, you know what, this is just a lot of work, and not to mention that there's also the operational side of it. It's not just the technology, and those will go out and they will approach a vendor, and they will get the vendor to provide them the infrastructure, and in some cases even provide them with the operational support. So when a TPP comes and they say, hey, I want to connect with you, it is not managed internally by the financial institution. They just send them to the vendor, and the vendor deals with them based on the requirements and the regulations. And in the case of Bahrain, that was mostly at the time there was an emerging partner in the ecosystem, and they were able to capitalize on the opportunity, and they connected most of the banks. Now, the third option, which is interesting, is the consortium option. And this type of consortium is what allowed you to deploy a countrywide or a national-wide infrastructure. And there have been some interesting success stories. If you look at the screen, you look at CBI, which is in Italy, connected over 500 banks through this one layer, a national layer. Rexis in Spain, over 40 banks, and LuxHub. And funny enough, last event, which was the Open Banking Expo in London, I met one of the guys from LuxHub, and he was telling me about how the banks came together. They created this entity, and then they started working together, which is a fantastic example of collaboration to build out, this uniform layer with all of the API documentation, all of the API catalog, the API management, the reporting, and such. Now, the idea of a consortium typically has to be mandated by a higher power, if you will. If you look at our region, you'll notice that most of the payment companies or the payment schemes, not all of them, but they are purchased and owned by the banks. If you take a look at Bahrain, Benefit, which is the payment company, but also does the credit bureau and does KYC and manages, other things, let's just say that, they are owned by the banks. Let's take a Jordan. Jordan, they have an entity called JOPAC, and JOPAC is also owned by the central bank and the banks. When you look at Libya, there is an entity called Muamalat, again, owned by the banks, and they specialize in payments. Saudi Pay, and so forth. The examples go on. What that makes you think is, okay, if I'm a country that's about to embark on this journey, and I want to accelerate the adoption, and I want to remove some of the challenges, and I will share with you in a second what were some of these challenges that were faced in some of the other markets that took one of the first two approaches, then I should leverage what I already have. So it doesn't mean that you have to go out and create a new consortium out of nowhere, especially if you already have something like that. Then you could build on top of it, and that becomes a way for you to create that synergy. Now, interesting question that just, asks itself, but how do you create competition? How do you create differentiation? Like if we're all going to be on the same layer and we're all going to be connecting our data and all through the same thing, like I want to be my own, my own bank, and I want to be competitive with the other financial institutions in the market. Well, my answer to that is, when you go out and you buy Oracle, an Oracle database, or an Oracle FlexCube core banking system, or you go and you buy a Microsoft Office suite or Microsoft SQL database, or you go out and you buy Amazon, whatever, isn't the same product being sold to Bank A, Bank B, and Bank C? It's what they do with it that makes a difference. So the very simple approach of saying, you know what, guys, just let's for once put the differences aside and understand how do we take advantage of the fact that we can create value for the ecosystem and level the playing field. And then what you build on top of that technology is what really allows you to differentiate yourself as a bank. Another interesting thing about this consortium approach is you have a lot better traction when it comes to pushing out updates and getting everybody to adopt. So let me give you an example. And that example is going to tie to the point I wanted to make about some of the challenges. When Bahrain, and I'm using them as an example because they're the ones who have been leading in the market so far, when Bahrain said phase one, and they focus on some account information APIs, accounts and transactions and listed beneficiaries and such, and then some payment APIs. And then in phase two, they added more payment APIs, pending, standing order, international, cross-border, and such. You found that even the speed of adoption wasn't the same because some banks may have not worked on their payment APIs. So as a result, they may have been able to hit the first milestone and then they got quite delayed on the second milestone. And in other cases, now the central bank is debating, okay, we want to move forward into open finance, but then our fear is we come across some of the same challenges where the banks are not seeing real value even from the first implementation. And by the way, this is a very common problem, and that typically comes from not taking the time upfront to think about the business outcome you're looking to achieve. And when it comes to the consortium model, the national model, you could take the time with a working group to establish certain requirements upfront that will deliver business value. Let me break this down for you. We always say open banking, open finance, it's going to help us with financial inclusion. Okay, great. Then you ask somebody, what do you mean by financial inclusion? Well, I want to get more people banked. Look at Iraq. Look at Egypt. Oh, look at UAE. Look at Saudi. Okay. Well, you realize that open banking, by definition, is only adapted to payment accounts, CASA, current and saving account, which means that unless you have an account, you cannot benefit from open banking. So then you get the philosophical response, okay, fine, then maybe I'm talking about better accessibility to finance. I'm trying to help not the unbanked, but the underbanked. So I'm going to take SMEs that cannot get a credit history, don't have credit history, or they don't have enough information to show how much they are worthy of credit, and we're going to use their transaction history to show, the inflow, the outflow, and how much they have saved at the end of the month, and blah, 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 and how much they paid their suppliers. Okay, great. But it still doesn't answer the fundamental question of, is it really solving financial inclusion? So now let me ask you this. What if, just what if, in this consortium model, right from the beginning, this group, let's take, let's take Egypt, for example, and we decide that we say, Central Bank of Egypt said, I'm going to push out a regulation, a framework, but guess what, guys? I'm not going to do payments. In my phase one, I'm only going to do data APIs, but my data APIs are going to be for accounts and wallets. Oh, wait a second, a wallet? Well, yeah, a wallet has a balance and it has transactions. And you can add beneficiaries, and it almost mimics the same model of a current account, a light current account, if you will. Well, then now we're talking. Now we're actually building an infrastructure that will cater to more of the unbanked population and can help. When I was visiting Iraq and I was talking to the banks, I realized that 70% of the population use wallets. 70%. People actually, I was shocked because when I go out for dinner and I wanted to pay by card, they're like, sorry, sir, we don't have cards, you got to pay cash. And I'm like, well, sorry, guys, I only have dirhams. So it was my first experience where in Iraq, they accepted UAE dirhams. Otherwise, I would have walked out without paying. But the point here is, guys, you have to think about the business value up front. And when you're doing it as a consortium, you ensure that everybody is on the same page. Because listen to this. If you decide you're going to push out this business model, but then you have 10 e-wallet operators and 25 banks, and you don't get them all on the same wavelength, then you end up having a problem. Let me give you an example of that problem. Let's take a very simple use case. Account aggregation. It's aggregating balances. And to aggregate balances, you would typically need access to multiple banks, and these multiple banks will provide the data that then gets aggregated. So let me take one TPP. This first one here, one of my favorite, companies out there, very nice startup called Genify. They do PFM, and they now, let's say, worked with one company and they launched an app. And in order for them to bring in all of my balances in one place, and Abe banks with these two banks, Mashreq and Emirates MBD, and he also has a wallet with Itisalat. Okay, unless Itisalat is connected, and unless the other banks are connected, then Genify will not have the right coverage. And by the way, the model that I'm referring to is this model, where all the banks and all the fintechs are connected to one layer. This model, what you see here, is the traditional model, where you've got Bank A with their own infrastructure, Bank B with their own infrastructure, Bank C with their own infrastructure. This infrastructure was built in-house. This one was purchased from a third-party vendor. This one was purchased from a third-party vendor from outside the country, and they decided to localize their solution. So you end up with inconsistencies. And now what also happens is this TPP, Genify, needs to connect here, needs to connect here, needs to connect here, needs to connect here. And you're going to say, but Abe, it's open banking. The specs should be the same. Yeah, I know. And guess what? The banks still have inconsistencies. And we're not talking in our markets. Go look at the UK. For the longest time, Barclays, I was talking to Nordigen, and they were telling me that Barclays didn't publish an IBAN. But then they went back and they fixed it for the longest time. So what you end up having is multiple integration points. These poor guys have to do all this work. And the banks, when they end up having to do reporting to the regulator, which is mandatory, each bank is uploading data. And some of them are doing push, some of them are doing pull, most of them are doing push, some of them are sending Excel files. But when you end up with the implementation like this, and this is a consortium model, or let's call it a national model, this is where you end up with one layer. That layer has the one gateway that's exposed to the market. And here you have all of the TPPs. These TPPs could be financial, could be fintechs, they could be non-fintechs, they could be e-commerce platforms, they could be schools, they could be small businesses, they could be corporates, right? And down here, you have regulators, and the regulators don't just have to be central banks. They could be a central bank. They could be the equivalent of a CMA, the Capital Markets Authority. They could be equivalent of the Insurance Authority. And why would they be connected? Because they want regulatory reporting. They want to look at the SLAs. They want to see how the financial institutions are providing the data. They want to look at the volumes. Volumes show adoption. Very interesting metric I shared the other day. Look over 1 year in the UK. This was the impact report. Look it up, OBIE impact report, October of last year, that when it was published. And they show you that between August 2020 to August 2021, number of payments through open banking went from 700,000 to 11 million. From 700,000 to 11 million. If that is not a sign of adoption, I don't know what is. But look, guys, reporting is what the regulators need, and what allows you to understand the market. When I used to teach at the university, I teach performance management because background is data and analytics. I used to say, guys, listen, whatever you can't measure, you can't move. Done. End of story. So measurement allows you to monitor the market. Now, another observation down here, these are not just banks. They're banks, they're insurance companies, they're pension companies, they're wallet providers, they're microfinance companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously you could tell that I'm an advocate of this national approach, but you have to realize that it doesn't work everywhere, right? Let's take a very obvious example where there is one regulation and it's across in one massive region, Europe, PSD2. When you look at the banks, even when you look at aggregators in those countries, TrueLayer, SaltEdge, Think, Token, whomever else, they have all acquired a large number of connections. They have large coverage, but the amount of time spent on maintaining and normalizing the data and following up to ensure takes up a lot of the effort. And this is why in those markets, the aggregators play an important role. Because an aggregator allows you to move away from this to this. Well, hold on a second. That means, Abe, that what you just showed us here is already an aggregator. Et voila, you're absolutely right. So think about that. By taking this approach, not only have you ensured compliance at a national level, you have also inadvertently or purposefully created an aggregation layer, because you've already aggregated the APIs from all the financial institutions and you've made it easier for the TPPs. Now, let me now tell you about where the banks can create value. The banks can create value by starting to offer premium APIs. So the data that comes out, transaction data or balances or whatever, that becomes very simple data. And I was pitching yesterday to one of the banks. I'm like, guys, let me just ask you something. What if you guys are a digital bank? You're less than whatever. You're 8 years old. What if you come up with a smart banking for SMEs? And SMEs is now a very important segment in many of the markets. And you realize that if you were to leverage a model like this, but then provide the ability to integrate bring the data and then and pass it through to an accounting software that could be partnered with the bank and part of the package, you be able to give them the ability to access all of their balances in one screen. So a very basic treasury management capability. You're able to allow them using and remember, and I'm going to talk about this in a second, when you start looking at open finance, it's no longer AIS and PIS. It's no longer account information services and payment initiation services. It's actually data, payments, and actions. So let's talk about action APIs. Imagine you are able to issue virtual cards on the fly using action APIs. And this can be done again through this model. That allows you to create a special package that is for SMEs. And trust me when I say this, because I used to have my own company in Canada. I would pay for that, a premium, because the amount of time I used to spend on just doing my accounting or doing my books was just astronomical. And if I wish I had, when I had employees, I can give them virtual cards or their independent cards with their own balances, so I can streamline the expense management. I wish that when I ran my business across different countries and I had different accounts, that I could always bring it all in one place. So this is just an example of where the financial institutions can create value, because they are also part of that aggregator layer. They no longer have to go and do single integrations. From a regulatory standpoint, one of the other benefits that we have to be mindful of is when the central bank or when the consortium is looking to bring new capabilities to the market, new APIs to the market. They could actually do that quite easily in the sandbox environment by publishing the new endpoints that are connected to some sort of demo mock bank that simulates the bank. And they could leave it out for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and they get feedback from the market. Because look at the components here, by the way. These are the standard components of an open finance platform. You've got a developer portal, a portal in which there is the test and production accessibility, managing your connections, managing the consents, all of that jazz. An API catalog, all the documentation of which APIs you can access, the API management, managing the all the way down to the data lineage of the API and who has access to what. And because these TPPs, by the way, depending on their license and depending on the consent and what have you, that will be managed differently. The sandbox environment is what I'm referring to right now. Here, you can say, oh, well, you know what, guys, next quarter, we're going to start to do we're going to start working on loans and mortgages. Let's start with a simple PLOC, a personal line of credit. We're going to start with a very simple one, which is an unsecured, so we don't have to worry about collateral or any of that. And here's the data model. Somebody who is managing the platform will then publish the documentation in sandbox mode, meaning you read the documentation, obviously, but then the actual endpoints for you to consume, whether through an app or through an API client like Postman or whatever, can be done in the sandbox. And once all the feedback has been obtained and the APIs have been refined, then you can easily promote them to production APIs. But then The banks obviously are expected to expose there, like there's usually these lines means that there is a small connector that sits. Oh yeah, and one other thing, but let me just finish this thought. And through the monitoring analytics, which is both for sandbox and from production, the regulator gets a sense for what works and what doesn't. And of course, as I already mentioned earlier, the consent management, etc. Now, the core banking connector, or what you can refer to a connector API, actually sits at the financial institution. And what's important to note is this, let's call it deployment. If you're doing it at a national level, you have one of two approaches, which I guess is common sense. You could approach it on a cloud, which in most countries, it will be a private cloud, and that's totally fine. A lot of the consortiums that already have payment capabilities and are a bit more mature, they have local cloud providers and they're quite robust, and you could deploy it on there. Or I won't even go there, but like you cannot do this. Like the banks may have an on-premise deployment of their core banking, which is 99.9% of the time the case. And this is why there's always one connector that sits at every institution and even at the central bank that allows them to access this shared layer and this national infrastructure. So the point I want to conclude with, and then we can open it up for a bit of a discussion and to see if there's any other questions. But it's important to realize that you want to create something, especially if you are in a market where you're about, and this is why this conversation, when Prasant was asking me, like, you know, what topic would you like to talk about? And I said, I want to talk about this because now we're starting to see that in the Middle East, in the region, banks and central banks and financial institutions are starting to say, okay, this is coming. Let's not kid ourselves. We are going to go into open finance. We're going to do this. The question is how to do it. And for countries that have, you know, a very, let's say, cohesive infrastructure and cohesive, ecosystem, and the right number of banks and financial institutions and other, you know, ecosystem players, and have an existing consortium that is also governed by the central bank, this is probably one of the better ways to go. And in an instance where also some financial institutions want to leapfrog, and some countries want to leapfrog, they can start thinking about open finance right through the door. And I'll conclude with the thought that this, ladies and gentlemen, is what leads to open data, and this is what leads to open finance. Because what happens after you build this base infrastructure is the following. You start bringing in down here government entities. You bring in the likes of MOICT. You bring the likes of the government, all of the commercial registration or databases where you've got all the commercial licenses and the owners and the directors and such for KYB. You bring in and this is interesting. This is one of the things I admire about Australia. When they wrote the CDR, the Consumer Data Regulation, it actually started off with open finance, and right off the bat they started saying, you know what, we're bringing in open energy, we're bringing in open health, and you can start bringing in, like, there's a standard even for utility companies. Like, observation, this is a fact, in Iraq I learned that there is no billing aggregator, and every aggregator or every company is just doing their own thing and they're connecting. Well, again, all the billers could be aggregated through this platform. The hospitals, the university, like, the sky is the limit. And this is why the natural progression has always been open banking, open finance, open data, or the open economy. And the word open, by the way, guys, is not about openness. Yes, of course, it's openness and transparency, but the word open means standardized. That's the key definition of open in all of these contexts. It's standardization. So I'll take a pause here. It's a topic I'm very passionate about. I can talk about it till tomorrow, but I think we only have limited time. So thank you so much for listening.
Hey, thanks, Abe. Thanks. We finally got a chance to hear you loud and clear, fully. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So a couple of questions. So one is, So I know you're interacting with the regulators on a day-to-day basis, and with that too with 10 plus or 20 plus countries, right? So specifically, we'll focus on the Middle East region. So how open are regulators to such an idea of a
That's a
national
great
impact?
question. Great question. You know what? They are actually like, they love it. They love it. They love the idea that their entire ecosystem will have a standardized way of connecting because they have struggled themselves. And interestingly enough, the banks are also quite interested in the approach because they're getting a lot of requests. Like, let me just give you a very simple one. In one of the countries, the regulator tells the banks, guys, our credit bureau is not being updated properly, etc. I expect that all of you are from now on going to provide these new data feeds from your core banking. Give me the customer, the accounts they have, the transactions, yada, 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 yada. And you're like, okay, you're going to, and they were about to implement this, everybody on their own, doing their own thing, XML, JSON, like just consuming a microservice. And when they heard about this, they're like, okay, we got to get this because that will save us so much work and effort when it comes to the integration and such. And the regulators, one of the things they like about this approach, and I'm talking even objectively, it's not about doing something that is unique, because we know in the Middle East we like to toot our horns and we're like, oh, we're the first to do this or we're the first to do that. But the reality is, when you talk to the people heading up these consortiums, or you talk to the central banks, they're like, we really want to help our infrastructure. We really feel that we are stuck. And this is just going to open up a lot of doors. So they think of this as a foundation in order to bring new products and services and to open up new opportunities on the market. And they feel it levels the playing field. So in a nutshell, they actually have quite an open mind towards it.
Okay, great to hear that, because that's where from coming from a private organization and taking something like that to a regulator or a national bodies, this is that apprehension will always be there. And in general, we across the globe, I believe we all are pessimistic in that aspect, at least that that response is
Natural
going to
level of pessimism, yes.
yes. So the next one is on one of the I think one of the major driving forces for this open banking or an open finance need to be bringing this unbanked or underbanked into the banking sector, the formal banking structure, right? So how is that in terms of the journey, in the open banking journey that different countries have taken or are intending to take? Where do you see that unbanked or underbanked or the bottom of pyramid, no matter what you call that, how do they fit in? I mean, are they in one of the driving forces, or it's just it's just an okay outcome? Okay, that's also happens.
No, it needs to be done upfront, on purpose, and by design. So the couple of examples that I gave earlier, or maybe on the other panel, is the fact that when you design your framework and you start implementing it, you have to be mindful of what products exist on the market right now and who's actually utilizing them. Some markets have current account and saving accounts, but the culture of the people, and this was fascinating to me, is that so they have an account, so they are banked, but the account has one transaction on it every month, pulling out the salary. That's all they do. And they take their cash and they stuff it under the mattress. And in other cases, you'll find that and that's like, let's say, the 30% of the market. And then the 70% are just using digital wallets. And these, because for them, they just don't trust the banks. And I know this is weird because normally a financial institution is a place where you trust where your money sits. But when you've been in countries that have a lot of conflict and a lot of social economic imbalance, that becomes a situation. And then other markets where everything is calm and everything is transparent and life is good, but people who are usually the workers or the blue collar, they may not necessarily gain access to accounts. So what they end up doing, like smart companies started doing, is generating these e-wallets. So what needs to happen by design is upfront, you need to tell yourself, I'm going to launch with these set of APIs. They will be applicable to both accounts, bank accounts, and e-wallets, as an example. And then even when you start then doing payment initiation, you need to create that interoperability right up front, where right now, yeah, a lot of e-wallet companies will build it with that light level of interoperability, but it's not streamlined. It's not just as simple as a payment initiation. But if you are on one network using the same set of APIs, then that makes it a lot easier. Another thing about the underbank is you have a bank account, but you are typically not gaining access to financing. And this is a major issue, especially for small, medium enterprises, because sometimes they need that loan to be able to carry on with the business and such. And credit bureaus haven't done the best job when it comes to providing you a fresh view of the customer. And you only get to see, their credit cards and any previous loans. But if they haven't had a previous loan, how do you base it? And then the other aspect is the requirements. Oh, I need 3 years of audited financial bank statements, etc. But through this and by design, you build in logic that allows you to take the simple transactional data, look at how are you paying your bills? Are they being paid on time? Do you have money at the end of the month? Are you setting it aside? Do you have any excess liquidity? All of that stuff, and a simple health score can be provided, not to be a standalone, but to augment the credit bureau if there is a score there. And that, in a sense, will be helping the underbanked. So it has to be done by design from the beginning.
Right. Yes. Great. Thanks a lot, Abe. Thanks for joining us
My
on
pleasure.
both the days. Take your time out to share your insights.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to meeting you in person, hosting you in person next year at Apidays Dubai. Thank you.
You can count on that. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So that brings to an end the opening keynotes at Apidays Dubai Day 2. We will have a short break now. We will have a break. Post the break, we will we'll be bifurcating into two stages, stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 2 will join back at in another 13 minutes from now, on focusing on the topic of segment of API first strategies. First speaker will be Ian Douglas from our sponsor Postman, talking to us about an API first world. Stage 1, the first speaker to join us was Ahmad Al-Tarawani from Dubai Police. Unfortunately, due to a medical emergency, he's unable to join us. So we'll have a longer break here. We will join back on this stage at 10:55 a.m. Dubai time. That will be like around 42 minutes from now. Thank you.